topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good afternoon, Orlando. Welcome to another Ask the Experts. You know what? I'm sorry. I got my cities confused. We are doing Tampa today. This is our Tampa show, but we're going to have attorney Alan Swartseed. He is going to be joining us in a few minutes, and he does the K. Bender Rimbaum show out of Orlando. So you should have seen us all this morning scrambling on who was going to do what show. We kind of heard that that hurricane could be hitting close to Tampa. So we hope everybody's okay in the Tampa, Jacksonville area. This is the last Tuesday of the month, which means our K. Bender Rimbaum show. I got to tell you, K. Bender Rimbaum, they're a community association law firm based out of Pompano, Florida. And they have literally been with us for 11 years. Out of the 60 shows we do a month, this is by far the number one show. We have more people who call in, who text in, who email in, who come on the chat line more than any other show we do. This is without a doubt our most popular show. And if you've been reading at all, or if you're a HOA condo association owner, there's some crazy stuff going on in Florida. And I have been getting letters. Some of them are kind of tear jerkers because we feel bad for what people are going through. But it's not the fault of your association. That's for sure. And maybe things will change. We have an election coming up in about 45 days. Maybe things will change. But for right now, we've got to deal with this. The good thing is, I know Governor DeSantis is really getting into this, is going to try to see if any changes can be made. I didn't know the governor's office would get involved with this until next year, but it looks like they're going to be sitting down. And this is one of the things that I definitely want to talk to Alan about, is what is going on out there. Does he see any relief at all coming from the governor's office? This is not something that just came overnight. This has really been brewing for a long time. I call it kicking the can down the road. And it's finally caught up with everybody. Hopefully, and it's not just the association. Look at your insurance, your homeowner's insurance, how much it's gone up. I mean, I looked at my auto insurance, how much it's gone up. And I hear from my friends that homeowner's insurance has gone up. Florida's a tough state because we get a lot of flooding and we get hurricanes. And there's a lot of insurance companies that have just literally pulled out of Florida. And when that happens, the few that are left really take advantage of the situation. So when Alan comes on, we're going to be talking about what is going on at the state level, and will anything be done? I've got about 40 different topics to keep up with on a daily basis, and it's hard just keep up on HOA Condo Association. But we have I'm telling you, They probably won't say this, but I'm telling you, we have one of the finest community association law firms in the state of Florida. What I love about this firm, and I just have been notified that Alan is here, but I'm going to let's go ahead and bring Alan up. And I want to finish why one of the things, there he is.
Hey, Steve.
Hi, Alan. How are you?
Doing all right. Thanks for your patience. It's been quite a day.
No problem. It's so easy talking about K. Bender Rimbaum. And I was just getting ready to say that this is a law firm that puts so much into the educational side. You probably don't think about it. We have 3-hour-long shows with K. Bender Rimbaum. That means they take out an hour each day to do this show for you. And they've been doing it for 11 years now. And education is so important. You're going to see they do free classes every month. This is just such an easy show to talk about. Alan, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you. And you talk about that education. I was just teaching a condominium board certification class, so I apologize. That's why I was a bit late. It came and backed up to the exact 5 o'clock time, so we ran over a couple minutes.
And they're a little bit longer now too, right?
Yeah, unfortunately for everyone involved, including us, they're now 4 hours long. So Emily Gannon from our Pompano office took the first half, and I stepped in at 3 o'clock to finish up the second half.
Alan, are you having any weather problems there? I saw that hurricane's out in the Gulf.
No, not yet. I for all of our Tampa area listeners, I'm praying for you guys and Kirsten as well, because I'm lucky enough to be in Orlando, and I'm getting out of Dodge and going down to South Florida for the Condominium Institute. Just tomorrow, I'm getting on the Bright Line to head down there. I'm praying for everyone in Tampa, and also my wife and kids who will be staying in Orlando. But I think everything will be okay. It's not looking pretty, but it's also not looking devastating. I mean, any major storm is going to cause problems, but if you need anything, we're here, and we'll be operational even if our Tampa office is unable to do so.
I know. I just heard the governor speak, and they're already putting warnings out in Tampa. So we want to absolutely pray for your office there. Yeah.
Kirsten does a great job. She's a great person as well. And, listen, hopefully everyone is okay, but I don't know that there's more I can say at this point about it other than we'll be praying for you guys.
Well, Alan, let's first of all, again, I love doing the show with you. Let's tell people who K. Bender Rimbaum is.
All right. Well, we're a law firm that does nothing but representing community associations with very, very limited exceptions. I do also a mediation practice, but limited to community association related issues. We've got offices, as we mentioned, in Tampa. We've got my office in Orlando area, which is in Winter Springs. We've got another one in Pompano Beach, Palm Beach Gardens, and Miami by appointment. 22 attorneys at this point. 8 of us are board certified in community association law. 1 is board certified in construction. So the bottom line is, throughout the entire state of Florida, anything that you need for a community association, we can handle it. Whether we're going to want to or not may be a different story, but we can handle pretty much anything that comes our way. And with Robert K. being 40 years in the industry, and Jeff and Mike being significantly experienced, and others within the firm having a ton of experience, there's just not much that comes up that we look at and say, I have no idea what to do with that. Whereas, you get with a lot of real estate firms and things like that, and the response is, well, let me spend 15 hours investigating what to do, and I'll get back to you. Whereas we're looking at it as, oh yeah, we handled that last month. Here's the 2-hour solution instead of the 15. So bottom line, we're really into the educational component, like you mentioned. Customer service is extremely important to the firm. For me overall and personally, I think it's probably one of the things we do better than a lot of other firms, which is making sure that if you ask a question, we're at least going to acknowledge that you asked it within a day. And if you don't hear from me within a day, I joke with my clients, but in reality, if you don't hear from me within one business day, you need to reach out again, because either I didn't get your email or I'm dead.
Yeah. Yeah. Alan, I got to tell you that I see a lot of community association law firms around the country with our show. And what I love about K. Bender Rimbaum, basically, this is all you do. And what I mean by that is you see a lot of firms out there, and they also do business law, they do real estate law. I mean, they've got like the shingle, criminal law, bankruptcy law. You mostly concentrate in this area.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you say mostly, it's pretty much exclusively. I'd say less than 5% of what we do is anything other than representing community associations. And 99% of that remaining 5% is representing owners or dealing with mediations that I mediate. We don't jump into the general real estate law. We don't do the random personal injury case that comes up that someone wants us to handle because they know an attorney at the firm. This is what we do, period.
Well, I guess I got to start off with an area that we have been bombarded with in the last week and a half. You probably know what I'm going to say already, but there's so many there's so many news reports out there that Governor DeSantis is going to get involved. What does that mean?
So what we're presumably talking about the governor getting involved with is the reserve issue that we've got in the state, where a lot of condos that are 3 stories or higher are going to have to put away a lot of money, and they never had to do it before, and their members simply can't afford it. What we're hearing is that Governor DeSantis is trying to push for a mid-session discussion between legislative sessions, a special session, to discuss how to address the fact that we're talking about assessments that people won't be able to afford. And there's going to be a lot of people. And Steve, you and I have talked about this for months and months. And frankly, since we started this show together, although you've done, the show with the firm for years, I just rejoined KBR 2 years ago. But since then, we've been talking about this issue. So what people are talking about is the governor basically forcing a special session of the legislation somehow, the legislature, because the leaders of the legislature have basically said they don't think it's necessary. And unfortunately, my opinion is that is based on some misinformation that they may have received. That none of these assessments will kick in for any condo until 2026. So it's not urgent. I don't think that some of the legislators that are making these decisions have really looked at what they themselves wrote to figure out that, some of this will kick in January of next year for a lot of communities. Some of it is already starting to kick in because, any budget that's adopted after after December 31st of this year is going to have to include these things. So what they're thinking is, no budget that's included before then will include these reserves. And it's just not accurate. So what they're thinking for some reason is no budget that's adopted is going to require the members to pay these reserves until January 2026 at a minimum. But in reality, it's already starting to happen throughout the state for those few, candidly, who have actually done these studies, have gotten the reports, and have already adopted or are in the process of adopting their 2025 budgets, and want to make sure that because they're being told they need to fully fund the reserves, that they're actually doing it. They're not required to fully fund it if the budget is adopted before December 31st of this year, but a lot of them are choosing to do it anyway so that they don't end up with a year of catch up by the time they do actually fully fund those reserves. So, bottom line, what we're being told by the legislature is that they don't think a special session is going to happen, that it's not necessary. And Governor DeSantis is basically saying, you don't seem to understand that you're putting the residents of these condos in a position where many, 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 many people will not be able to pay their assessments and are on fixed incomes because, let's be realistic, we're in Florida. So they will simply not be able to live in their condos anymore. And let's also be realistic that living in a condo is not necessarily any less expensive than trying to sell that condo and buy a regular lot in an HOA or outside an HOA. It's simply not cheaper anymore. So you've got people that spent their whole lives planning to retire in this condo in Florida, and they're going to have to move to a trailer in Tennessee so that they can afford to live because of these reserves. So that's what the governor, from what I'm understanding, is trying to help with. And he's kind of being stymied and pushed back by people that are saying, well, none of this is kicking in yet, so I don't know what the problem is. But it is for a lot of communities, and it is a concern.
What would you do? What would you do if you were the governor?
Well, I would require there to be an actual investigation and discussion of what this is going to do to the members of this state, the residents of this state who happen to live in condos that are subjected to these laws. Is it going to truly result? The government is required to be provided with copies of these reports once they're completed. Start looking at them and seeing what each unit is going to have their assessments increase. And if it's going to be $300-400 a month that the assessments are going up, frankly, most people in Florida that are on a fixed income can't afford $300-400 a year. So
Right. Look
and see, is there really a problem here? At least do the investigation rather than just saying, I think it's fine.
We also are getting a lot of letters from people who the value of their condos have gone way, way down. So they can't even sell their condo unless they're going to take a major loss.
Well, that's because that's due in large part to the expectation that these assessments are just going to be astronomical.
Is that what's causing it?
I think that's a big part of it, because we're not seeing that drop in value in HOAs. What we're seeing is an increase in value. And I don't do real estate general law, but I do know a lot of realtors and talk to them about these things. What we're seeing is an increase in the value of condos that are less than 3 stories, because people want to stay in a condo. They want that ease of getting to the point of not having to do the maintenance themselves, etc., but they can't afford the assessments that they see coming. So they're selling their condos on the 5th floor in favor of moving down to the 2nd floor in a 2-story condo.
We're going to go to, we have got so many emails and text messages with questions. We're going to start off with Greg in St. Petersburg. What happens when an HOA goes into receivership?
You end up spending a lot more money than you should, is the bottom line. So a receivership is essentially what happens when there's a lawsuit filed that says the association isn't being maintained or operated properly. Sometimes it happens because the directors all drop off and you can't get a quorum to make any kind of board decisions. Sometimes it's all the directors have dropped off and you need a receiver appointed just to appoint new directors. And so what happens is that receiver, usually they're an attorney. There's a couple that are not attorneys that I know that operate here in Central Florida and out in Tampa as well. But they will basically take over the management of the entire community, regardless of whether you have a manager that's being paid or not, and they will serve in place of the board until there is a replacement board appointed or elected. So you're basically paying an attorney's hourly rate every time a decision needs to be made by the board, every time you need to go back to court on any of these issues. So you're basically paying for a lawsuit anytime you want to actually operate your community. That's a receivership. So if it can be avoided in any way, shape, or form, that is almost always going to be better for the association, because you end up paying tens of thousands of dollars for someone to do the job that volunteers really should be doing.
We just got a text asking, let's see, what are some of the questions that your clients, I'm a board member, what are some of the questions your clients are asking you?
That is very open. How do we amend our governing documents? How do we make sure that we're not violating the law when we don't ask you questions? Do we need an architectural review process? Do we need architectural standards? What rules and regulations can we put in place, and which ones are actually enforceable? I mean, it like I said, we handle literally everything. I mean, I have a case that just came in for a new client that we're defending a personal injury lawsuit. I mean, we handle everything that an association needs. So that's why I say that's a really open question. If the person that asked that can specify a little more what arena they're looking at, or even whether they're in an HOA or a condo, that might be a little bit more helpful for me to kind of put that in place. But like I said, if you're looking for, I'm not sure what to ask, I'm not sure what to do. I'm a new director of a condo or HOA. I just finished teaching a condominium board certification class. We'll be doing an HOA one next month. Those are the types of things that, in my opinion, you should be taking a look at to figure out not only what questions should you be asking your attorney, but what do we even need to be thinking about that I generally wouldn't think about if an attorney or someone that's teaching a class like that hadn't mentioned it to me. So my suggestion to the person that can't figure out what to ask is take a couple classes. We have a bunch available for free on our website under the resources tab. If you don't care about getting credit for it, you can watch everything we've ever done, including this Ask the Expert show will be up on our website probably by the end of the weekend.
Yeah, Jeff's good at that. Let me do this last question, then I want you to give your schedule out
Sure.
for October. Cecil in Palm Harbor wants to know regarding HOA board meetings.
Okay.
If a board meeting is done by Zoom, 1, does it have to be recorded? And 2, if it's recorded, is it now part of the record and must be kept for 7 to 10 years?
So it doesn't need to be recorded. You would just have your meeting minutes. That replaces any kind of recording. If it is recorded, and I don't recall offhand, to be candid, whether this is the same in a condo and an HOA, but in a condo, if you record that meeting via Zoom, it remains an official record of the association until the minutes of that meeting have been adopted. So once you adopt those minutes, you're allowed to delete that recording. Now, if you're worried about the 7 to 10 years, regardless of whether you're in a condo or HOA, it can be deleted once you've adopted those minutes. The only question is whether it is or is not an official record of the association until those minutes are adopted.
Let's go to your schedule.
Sure.
You got a busy schedule for October.
Yeah, we got a lot of things coming up. The CAI Suncoast Chapter Trade Show was just reported as postponed due to the storm. So that was supposed to be on the 26th, which is in 2 days, but I think that's being rescheduled for sometime in early November. October 3rd and before October 3rd, I and Jeff Rembaum, and I don't know if we've got anyone else speaking, but we'll be at the Condominium Institute. That's primarily for nerds like me who do condo law and care about it enough to want to speak to other nerds like me. So that'll be on Thursday and Friday of this week. Jeff and I will be speaking. I don't know if anyone else from the firm will be doing that as well. October 3rd, we've got funding construction projects. October 7th, the HOA board member certification class will be teaching. October 24th is the Tampa Condo and HOA Expo. October 29th is the same thing, just in Bradenton instead. We've got probably 5 or 6 other classes throughout the month. So my recommendation, if you're not sure what we've got coming up, get on our mailing list. And if you don't want to do that and you just want to sign up for one class at a time, check out kbrlegal.com. That's K Bender Rembaum, kbrlegal.com. And if you go under the calendar tab, every class that we've got coming up, including the Ask the Expert show, is always going to be listed on there in advance.
Tell people also the phone number they can call that'll reach any of the offices.
It's 1-800-974-0680, and that'll reach, like you mentioned, Steve, any office, including Tampa and Orlando.
We're going to go to break, Rebel. We're going to go to break. When we come back, we have more with Alan. It's board certified, Alan Swartzide.
Yes, sir.
We'll be right back.
K. Bender Rembaum is a full-service community association law firm dedicated to the representation of community associations throughout Florida. On kbrlegal.com, you can learn more about their offices in Pompano Beach, Palm Beach Gardens, Orlando, Tampa, as well as throughout Miami-Dade by appointment. Several K. Bender Rembaum attorneys are board-certified specialists in condominium and plan development law and assist clients with all matters of community association legal issues while keeping them up to date on new developments that affect their associations. K. Bender Rembaum is also a well-known provider of free legal education for managers and board members. Contact K. Bender Rembaum today by calling 800-974-0680. That's 800-974-0680 to reach any of their locations. You can also visit them online at kbrlegal.com or write to them at info@kbrlegal.com.
And we are back with the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV with your hosts, Steve-O, Sophia, and their expert guests.
This is the Ask the Expert show. This is the last Tuesday of the month. Normally we'd be doing the Tampa show, but we've got Alan, attorney, board certified attorney. I got to do that. And he's out of the Orlando office. And I got to tell you, we just got a text in, a long text. This address this. It says, I live in a newer community governed by an HOA, and we have hurricane glass on every window except for one bathroom that has approximately 8 foot high by 8 foot wide glass block window. We all have shutters to protect the windows, which window is in the rear of our home and it's not visible from the street. Under our rules, we are only allowed to close the shutter if a hurricane is imminent and the HOA board issues permission to close it. It must be open again within a few days. We are away for the summer and would like to leave our shutters closed for the hurricane season. Well, it's a perfect one right here during the hurricane. But the HOA says we can't. Do we have any rights under the new Florida HOA laws?
So the short answer is probably not. And the reason for that is there's nothing in the law that was passed in July of this year that changed the right to have hurricane shutters just sitting there closed for an entire season. The board does have the reasonable ability to say you can't just shut them permanently. Now, what you're probably referring to based on the way that you phrased the question is that it's located in the back. No one's going to see it. There are no adjacent property owners, no adjacent lots, no adjacent common areas or golf courses, etc. No one's going to be able to see it. Well, if no one can see it from a practical perspective, you might be okay. But there's nothing in Florida law that says you can do this, to just shut it for the entire season. What I would suggest, is that you get in touch with someone in the community that's willing to go over to your property and put the shutters up whenever there actually is a storm, like now. Because if you just leave them up and you try and rely on the Florida statutes that say that if it's not in the frontage and it's not on a visible area of your lot, you're probably okay. There is a potential argument that that is not valid as to your particular community because your governing documents don't contain certain language that adopts the HOA Act of Florida as amended from time to time. This is more than we have time to discuss today from a legal context, but the bottom line is there may be a constitutional reason why your community is not subject to those new laws, between the one that came out last year that said if it's not visible from the frontage and it's not visible from an adjacent lot, it's not enforceable. And this year, which added to those two criteria that if it's visible from an adjacent common area or an adjacent golf course, it's also enforceable. So bottom line, there's no guarantee that you'd even succeed if you were saying it's in the backyard, it's not visible, there's nothing they can do.
So people who are down here 6 months out of the year, they go back to their second home and they're gone during hurricane season. They just have to get someone to secure the house and then take everything down after the hurricane.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about anything that's outside, just bring it in for the season. But when you're talking about the actual shutters, yeah, if you're going to choose to have a second home that you don't reside in, it's your responsibility, from my perspective, to make sure that home is not only protected but also in compliance with the governance of your community. And if your governing documents don't allow someone to just leave the shutters on for 6 months because you're gone for that long, I hate to be blunt, but that's on you for buying a property within that community that had the restriction in place.
Judy and Braden wants to know, oh, we got a lot of these. What happens if we get an unsafe structure violation?
Chances are you're going to have to move out for a bit until the association goes ahead and makes the repairs that are needed. The good news is that if you're talking about a condo, which I presume you are, otherwise, if it's an HOA and it's just your lot that's unsafe, you need to get the repairs done yourself. But if it's a condo, the reserves that you've been putting aside, presuming there are any, the statute now says that you can use that money to make the structure safe, and you can replenish those funds later on. But the bottom line is you'll probably have to move out until the association and through the board goes ahead and does what is needed to make it a safe structure.
Mark in Clearwater, and we get a lot of these too. He said, I'm thinking about running for our board. What are the responsibilities of being a board member? And what kind of background do you need to have?
Well, when it comes to background, the only background you need to have, from my perspective, is to care enough about your community to do the right thing and to care enough about your community to get educated. What do you need to know? Take a board certification class, take the classes that we provide that other service providers are offering within the industry, and get to know this area of practice as a director. The most important thing to understand is that you will have a responsibility as a director or as an officer to do what's in the best interest of the association, even if it hurts you personally or financially. So that is something that I frequently see people saying, well, I don't want to do this because, I don't want to pay all these assessments. I don't want to have to do X, Y, Z. But the bottom line is that's your responsibility as a director if you choose to be on the board of a corporation. You need to understand that whether the association is there to make a profit or not, it's still a business. So if you choose to run a business by being on the board, you need to do it the right way. So again, I think the best advice you can get, which is now required by law anyway for new directors, take a board certification class, take a lot of the other educational programs that firms like ours offer, and make sure that you're getting all the information you possibly can to figure out how to be a better director. The good news is you're not going to sit there for 12 hours a day like you would in college or in law school to try and figure out how to be a lawyer. You're going to spend maybe 12 hours a year, even if you went above and beyond and basically watched all of the classes that our firm offers, because most of them are done again. But we do have, I think, 10 or 12 classes that we regularly teach. Even if you did all of them and learned everything you possibly can from our firm without even going to another vendor, that would be more than most directors do, to be candid. So it sounds like you care enough to do the right thing. Now it's just a matter of acting on it. If you're not sure if you want to be on the board, I would hold off doing all that education. But the bottom line is, what really is your responsibility is to properly operate and maintain the community that you live in or you own property in.
There's a follow-up question. They want to know, are there tests involved in the certification classes?
Yes, it's a 300-question exam. No, I'm just kidding. There's no test. Generally speaking, there are no tests. I know there's been a question of whether that might be appropriate, or at least some kind of code that you get throughout to make sure people are paying attention. As of right now, there's no legal requirement to have that kind of verification that someone actually got the knowledge that they're supposed to have. The requirement is that we provide the education if we provided the education and they stuck around for the 3 to 4 hours, depending on whether it's HOA or condo, they get their certificate, and that's their educational requirement to start as a director. That is like a basics course, the board certification class.
Beth in St. Petersburg wants to know, what steps can a condo association take if they have a resident that is a hoarder or has a unit questionable on ability?
Well, the first thing that you need to understand is that as a condo, you have the automatic right of entry into every unit to protect the common elements and protect adjacent units. So step one would be to send a notice saying, hey, we've heard you're a hoarder, not in those words, but we've heard that there might be items that are being stored improperly, potentially resulting in infestations within your unit. We have the right to enter into your unit to protect adjacent common elements and adjacent units, and we intend to do that on X date. And then you go to the door and try and get in. And if they don't let you in, you might need to get an injunction to get in. And if you find that there really is a hoarder in the unit, we've dealt with several of those. And just in the last 6 months, I've dealt with 3. And eventually you get a police presence, you get a court order if you need to, you enter into the unit, and you do the removal of all of the items that are being hoarded. And you make sure that you get the exterminator there, you take care of everything that needs to be done. And then hopefully, it's another 6 months to a year before you're in the same situation again. The good news is, once you get that court order once, if you do it right, you've got a permanent injunction that requires them to maintain the unit and stop hoarding. So if they violate it again and you find out that they're hoarding again, you just go right back to court, get an order, and you enter right back into the unit and do the repairs again 6 months to a year later, or however long it takes to unfortunately have them get back into the same situation where they're not properly maintaining all of the garbage that they're leaving in the unit.
We just had someone who just moved into a condo, and they want to know about, are there local laws or community association laws when it comes to loud music?
There might be community association rules and regulations. Usually you're going to find that type of loud music issue in your nuisance provision. There might be local ordinances that say no loud music above a certain number of decibels after 9 o'clock or something like that. Usually that's going to be an issue of calling the police. It's not going to be a neighbor to neighbor issue. But if it gets to the point where the music is so loud that it's bothering like 5 units, all the adjacent units at once, then the association might need to get involved. But usually it's going to be a violation of an ordinance rather than just, hey, the members of the association are tired of the loud music. You just call the cops.
I have a Steve O question.
Okay.
Our shows, there was at least 2 or 3 people who would ask about pet ordinances. And I swear the last 3 or 4 months, not one question about pets. Did something happen?
No changes. I think people are finally not using as many of the false emotional support animal certificates that you can get from the internet. So I think that's impacting it a lot. But yeah, I can't really say 100% one way or the other what is causing the lack of problems. But hey, I'm just glad that everything is safe and we're not having those issues.
This is from Melissa in Largo. With all the new laws, is it any easier to get a tenant out that are past due?
Tenant that are past due, no. There really hasn't been any kind of change there. But if you've got provisions in your governing documents, you might be able to evict someone that is, because the owner's not paying. What you can do if the owner is past due and that's what you're concerned with, if you're in a co-op, you can evict someone that's past due, but usually not in a condo, especially if it's the actual owner of the unit. You can foreclose that unit, but that's different from an eviction. That is, you send notice of late assessment, intent to lien notice, file a lien, send another notice of intent to foreclose, and then you go through a whole lawsuit. It's not like an eviction that takes like a week or 2 and then you're done. What you can do if there's a tenant in the unit and the owner is not paying their assessments on time, is send a notice to the tenant that they need to pay their rent directly to the association until that landlord is current on their assessments. So that's an option.
Richard in Tampa wants to know, he said, I have been listening to your show for 2 years. I'm in awe of your knowledge. I don't miss a show. Is this your cousin, Alan? It sounds like one of your cousins.
Could be. I don't know anyone else that would give me that kind of compliment, but I appreciate it nonetheless.
What is the recourse for an owner who is exceeding condo of number of residents of 3 per condo docks? There's 2 families living in this condo.
Well, you would try and, basically just like any other violation, you send notices saying that they're in violation. You see how they respond. And if they don't, or if they respond in a way that is not acceptable to the board to resolve the matter, you would send it over to your attorney to seek an injunction and seek basically an order from a court that says the additional people that shouldn't be there need to get out. I mean, my only question is, what's the reason for the limitation of 3 people unless you're in like a 1-unit condo? Because I can imagine, even if you had 2 bedrooms, I can imagine 2 people living in each bedroom without a problem. So I'm just curious what the reason for limiting it to 3 people per unit is, unless these are like studio condos.
Eileen in Clearwater wants to know, how will not having Kaufman language affect the association concerning the new laws?
Well, I said I wasn't going to talk about this, but I guess I am. So that's great. So that Kaufman language, by the way, is, like I mentioned earlier, it's language incorporating either the Condominium Act, which is Chapter 718, or the HOA Act, which is Chapter 720. The important part is those acts get incorporated expressly as amended from time to time. That's that magic language, the as amended from time to time. We call it Kaufman language because it was discussed in a case called Kaufman versus Scheer. Not having that language will mean that if there is a procedural change to the statutes, meaning you have to have an extra meeting before you can fine someone or something like that, that will apply, regardless of what language is in your declaration, because it's procedural. But if you don't have Kaufman language and you haven't adopted future changes to the statutes into your declaration, then the statute as of the year of your declaration being recorded is the one that applies to your community, which means that if there's a substantive change, meaning, just like the HOA stuff that we've talked about, where the HOA Act now says that the association can't enforce violations for people parking trucks and commercial vehicles in their parking spots or in their driveways if it's prohibited under the governing documents. Okay, the Florida statutes now say that prohibition no longer applies. My response is, but we don't have Kaufman language, which was the question. Getting back to the original question, we don't have Kaufman language. And as a result, it would be unconstitutional to tell us that this contract that's been in place since the 1970s is suddenly unenforceable as to this community. So if it's a substantive right and there's no Kaufman language, the argument the association could make is that those statutory changes don't apply to this community. The problem with trying to make that argument is that you might need to take it all the way up to the Florida Supreme Court to have that statute ruled unconstitutional as to your community. And it might not apply to assist other communities, depending on the way that the Florida Supreme Court actually writes the opinion. So what you're talking about is, we can continue stopping people from having trucks in their communities if we want to pay a $300,000 to $500,000 attorney's fee to get this thing all the way up to the Florida Supreme Court. And by the way, if you're the community that wants that, feel free to give me a call. I'll be happy to take that case.
Yeah. Gene in Tampa, do we have to fund reserves for elevators?
So I don't believe elevators are one of the specific items listed in the Structural Integrity Reserve Study. But chances are they are going to be included in the general statutory catch-all, which is anything that costs more than $10,000 to repair or replace every so often. So you'll probably have an obligation to fund those reserves, but they probably will be something, and don't quote me on this one, I'd have to take a closer look at the statute, but it probably will be something that the members can vote to reduce the funding for or not fund in any given calendar year or any given fiscal year.
I think on the pets have been replaced with elevators and parking. Those are our new hot topics. Here's Craig in Tampa, HOA. Parking laws is a true one of the new laws now allows work vehicles can now park in your own spot or driveway.
So that's exactly what we just talked about. And yes, there is a law that says that. The question is whether that statute actually applies in your particular community and whether your board is willing to take the chance that they're going to have to fight that all the way up to the Supreme Court. And frankly, whether an owner who bought into a community knowing about the restriction or in a situation where they should have known about the restriction should fight the association when in reality, it's their responsibility to comply with these limitations.
Mary in Tampa, my condo association used reserve funds to settle a litigation settlement problem. Can they do that?
Generally not without having a member vote first. You can use funds for a purpose other than the reserve item, but chances are this was not a litigation specific reserve. So they probably needed to have a member vote in order to do that.
Okay. Here's Millie in Palm Harbor. Love your show. This is a condo question. I sent a registered letter to the new property management requesting financials, and they keep turning me down. What can I do? They are not up on our website.
So if you can't get access and you're requesting access and they're not providing it, unless they have a policy that dictates how you're supposed to send those requests and you're not complying with it, the next step would be to send them a statutory offer to participate in pre-suit mediation about the fact that they're not providing records that they're supposed to provide to you. That's going to be required before you can file any kind of lawsuit, which would be the next step after they ignore your offer for pre-suit mediation as well.
Kind of saved this question for last since we only have a few minutes.
Sure.
Tell me, there's a lot of community association firms out there. Tell me how K. Bender Rimbaum is different.
Well, I mean, I mentioned earlier briefly that I think we respond quicker. We may not get all of the work done faster, but you'll at least know that someone's working on it. I think that the ability to focus on one area of law, and I fully acknowledge there are other firms that mostly focus on this area of law, but the fact that we are exclusively working on one area of law means that all of the attorneys within the firm, even the people in the litigation department, have a lot of knowledge about this area of law. What you commonly find is that the litigators, they know how to litigate fantastically, but they don't know anything about the specific area of law. They have to kind of ask other attorneys within the firm, hey, what are your thoughts on this in order to be able to deal with any particular issues. I think that we just have a really good knowledge throughout the firm, all of the attorneys of this area of law, and just the amount of education we provide. I know there are other firms that provide more, but a firm our size, I don't know of anyone that's got 6 or 7 people who have 3 to 4 speaking engagements a month that they don't get paid for. I think that's rare, if not almost unique, within Florida firms that practice in our practice area.
And your customer service is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we really do treat customers like they're not a number. And when I say customers, I mean clients. If you're working with our firm, if you're working with me, it's never going to be, I don't have time for you, which I've actually gotten emails that were forwarded to me when someone said, okay, it's time for us to find a new lawyer. I've gotten emails that were literally word for word, I don't have time to deal with your association right now. Okay, then you shouldn't be working with that association. Yeah. But yes, the customer service aspect, I tell people that my job at this point is a customer service rep more than an attorney about a quarter of the time.
Well, we got to get out of here. We'll see you again next month. Tell people how they can reach you.
Sure. My email is as@kbrlegal.com. That's Alan Schwartzide at K-Bender Rembaum. And the website, if you want to reach us there, kbrlegal.com.
You're the best. We made it.
All right. Thanks a lot, Steve.
Let's see you soon.
Stay safe,
Thanks,
everybody.
Alan. And that's Alan Schwartzide. He's an amazing board-certified attorney. That's it for us today. We'll be back again with you next week with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Experts show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.